Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
Exploring faith and the future. Neil Johnson and Bible teacher Dr. Camille Majdali.
We're talking through a whole lot of great issues about the book of Exodus in the Old Testament. There's one element, Camille, that in some past generations perhaps people have felt was a little dry in the book of Exodus, and that is teaching about the tabernacle. But the tabernacle is so loaded full of wonderful meaning.
Well, the tabernacle is one of the greatest types we have in the Old Testament. A type is referring to an object or a person that points us to Christ, who's the antitype. And this tabernacle, there are churches that used to spend weeks and weeks talking about the tabernacle. Now, I've heard people be critical and make fun of that, but it is God's word. Furthermore, there's a place in Israel called Timnah National Park. And in Timnah National Park, they have recreated Moses' tabernacle to scale. It's a messianic ministry. And people are coming from all over the place to see this tabernacle in the wilderness. And it's an outstanding opportunity, Neil, to give the gospel. It's a half an hour presentation, and people are not looking at their iPhones when it's happening. They're actually paying attention. So I guess it depends how you do it, but as God's word, to me, it is vital. But I'm happy to share with you, if you want, about what is the meaning here.
How can you do that in a nutshell?
All right, in a nutshell, because of our time, it's simple. When you see an illustration of the tabernacle, it has three parts. There are three courts, as it were. There's the outdoor court, and in it, it's very simple furnishing. It has a laver, which is like a big sink, and they have the altar of sacrifice. Well, of course, the altar of sacrifice represents Christ's sacrifice outside the walls of the city or outside the sacred precincts. And the laver is, of course, representing the washing that happens because of the shed blood of Christ. That's the outer court. Then inside the tent itself, the tabernacle was a tent. There are two parts. The first part is the holy place. And that holy place had an altar of incense, which represents prayer. It had the showbread. Christ is the bread of life. It had the candlestick. Christ is the light of the world. And the incense from that altar represents Christ's intercession. Hebrews 7:25. Christ is the great high priest. He ever lives to give intercession for us. And then you had the inner place within that tent. Remember the illustration. We have a fence. We then have the outer court, outdoors, laver and altar of sacrifice. We have the holy place inside the tent, which is partitioned. Then the third part, actually, the final part, is the Holy of Holies. In the Holy of Holies, you have the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark is the big chest that contained the Ten Commandments, and that's the main thing. There's the rod of Aaron that budded and the manna and so on. The Ark represents God's throne. The mercy seat is just the top of the Ark. The Ark wasn't that big, by the way. The mercy seat is the top of the chest, and on both sides of it are these cherubims. They look like fiery angels. So the mercy seat, the top of the ark, is where God sat. That's his presence. That's his throne. That's his local earthly address. What does Christ do? By his sacrifice in the outer court, the way is made for all of us, not just the high priest once a year in Yom Kippur, but for all of us to boldly come to the throne of grace where there's mercy, grace to help in time of need.
Faith and the Future with Neil Johnson and Dr. Camille Majdali from Teach All Nations. For more from Dr. Majdali, including books and DVDs on prophecy, Bible commentaries, plus today's and other episodes of Faith and the Future, go to vision.org.au.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.